Hello and thank you for watching today. I would like to introduce you today to our guest, Ashley Godfrey. She comes to us with issues in the family courts, and we welcome her today. Thank you for being here, Ashley.
Yep, no problem.
Ashley, what would you like to enlighten or educate people on psychiatry and psychology about today?
The DSM, billable and non-billable codes. Billable codes are diagnosis or disorders. Non-billable codes are called V codes. They're phases of life. These are not billable. V codes, given examples of ones that would occur in the family court system, are V code 62.83 or ICD code 269.82, non-spousal adult abuse, V 65.49 ICD or ICD Z 69.81, encounter a victim of non-spousal abuse, ICD code 995.82, emotional and psychological abuse of an adult, V code 15.42, child emotional abuse, ICD 10 T74.1, child abuse, V code 61.21, child abuse physical, V code 62.83, non-parent child abuse, V code 61.20, parent-child relationship problem or parental alienation syndrome, V code 62.82, grief or bereavement, V code 15.42 or ICD code Z 62.811, personal history of psychological abuse, V code 15.41, personal history of physical abuse including sexual abuse, V code 61.08, family disruption due to extended absence of a family member, V code 995.80, adult maltreatment, V code 995.81, physically abused person, V code 62.89 or ICD code 265.8, religious or spiritual problem, E codes identify who commits the act, these are non-billable codes, identifies the nature of abuse, and identifies the intent. Signs of abuse. Warning signs of emotional abuse. Excessively withdrawn, fearful, or anxious, shows extremes in behavior, extremely compliant or extremely demanding, extremely passive or extremely aggressive, doesn't seem to be attached to the parent or caregiver, inappropriate, infantile, rocking, thumb sucking, throwing tantrums, physical signs of physical abuse are withdrawn, fearful, or extreme behavior, injuries on the child, unexplained injuries, other signs of emotional injury are sleeping problems, inability to play as most children do, speech disorders, antisocial behavior or behavioral extremes, and delays in emotional and intellectual growth. Also, the DSM, psychiatrists and psychologists both have to label you to bill your insurance.
It sounds like you've really done extensive, work on checking out all this information, and I'm sure everybody really appreciates the research you've done. What is the findings through your research about the money that the pharmaceutical companies bring in with psychiatric diagnoses?
$330 billion.
Wow. Imagine what we could do if we had that money to take care of children and help rehabilitate parents.
Right.
It would really make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
How many deaths annually does this cause?
42,000.
Oh, wow. Is that just, and can you elaborate that on just a little bit so everybody can hear what?
Psychiatric drugs.
Okay, so that's how many people die from the psychiatric
Side
drugs.
effects, you know, or like it can cause you to be suicidal.
Yeah, and I understand a lot of psychiatric medications
Mhm.
can cause suicide
Oh, yeah.
ideations. What else would you like to bring to light about this particular information that you've brought today?
This money goes to fund legislators and politicians that pass laws like you cannot sue for the side effects of anything FDA approved. What never goes off the FDA approved market is psychiatric drugs. Foster children or children with the most B codes. Foster parents and foster homes get more money per label the child has. Judges managed to place 20 million children with batterers and molesters due to stigmas of mental illness, quote, mental illness, or due to abuse.
Now, I've seen that over and over again with protective moms especially, that somebody, whether it be a judge or a social worker or somebody that is supposed to be helping the children, like an attorney for the child, sometimes CASA workers, there's various levels. They don't have psychiatric degrees, and yet they're labeling both children and parents with psychiatric disorders.
Yeah, with their psychosocial evals that trigger
Yes.
people's trauma.
And it's my
Yeah.
understanding, too, that through the foster care system, and we're not against the people who are out there to do their job and do a good job, but there's many social workers that are appearing to not help the children nor the parents in situations, and it's my understanding that if the child has a diagnosis of some mental health illness or some type of previous neglect, and they put that diagnosis on the child, they can get more money than they would by just adopting them out without a diagnosis.
Right.
Is that what you found in your research as well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what kind of parents exhibit abusive behaviors and aggressive, hostile, authoritarian parents?
Yeah, the aggressive, hostile parenting is actually connected to narcissists or sociopaths. Aggressive, hostile parenting, it is most common when parents are divorced or separated, but it can also occur in situations where a family is intact. And the manifestations of hostile, aggressive parenting are parents who constantly undermine the credibility of the targeted parent, interfere in the legally allowed rights of the targeted parent, lie or exaggerate claims to secure advantages in divorce, custody, or protective order processes, exhibits inordinately controlling behaviors towards children, former spouses, and others involved, engage others such as friends, coworkers, and family members in attempts to drive a wedge between the child and the other parent. These children perform poorly in school, fail to develop acceptable social skills, learn to imitate the aggressive and confrontational styles of hostile, aggressive parent, increases a child's propensity to violent behavior in life later, and also leads to parental alienation syndrome. Now, there are different levels of this.
Let me just step in just for 1 second. For
Okay.
those of you who don't know, I worked in the mental health field, and narcissistic personality disorder is quite literally a disorder in which the parent who is giving everybody grief and causing the contested custody case are generally people who believe that the entire world revolves around themselves. In general, they're the type of person that when you ask them about the children, they'll often change the subject and place it back on themselves because they can't see outside of their own little world. And they, quite frankly, believe that the whole world revolves around them in a very literal sense.
And they project everything on everybody else.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it ends up being everything's everybody else's fault, as Ashley has stated, and they don't take responsibility for anything. I just wanted to give a brief description about that because it is something that we see a lot in contested custody cases.
And sociopaths put on a superficial charm and are very manipulative and pathological lying and other behaviors.
Okay.
Now there's different levels of hostile aggressive parenting. They will badmouth the other parent in front of the child, not willing to participate in any reasonable form of written communication, will frustrate normal, healthy telephone communication, such as supervising phone calls, will say the child does not want to speak to the other parent, will not let the other children speak for themselves, will undermine the other parent's authority, will tell the child they cannot alter parenting times outlined on the court order because the court order doesn't allow it, will play on the child's guilt or sympathy, will be uncooperative when it comes to holiday schedules, deny access to children by pretending the child is sick or has too much homework, insist the child be returned on time, while not respecting the same rules, take the children to their own counselors, doctors, etc. without knowledge of the parent, unwilling to consider any kind of fair or equal parenting time, not inform the other parent of upcoming school events, activities, disregard, or sell gifts from the parent, will object to the parent taking the child to counseling, attempt to spread hate and to extended family of the targeted parent, will threaten the child with loss of love if they choose the other parent, will coach the child to spy on the other parent, will create conflict with the child just after visits, and then blame the other parent for being the cause of the conflict. Severe symptoms are use of excessive discipline, openly violate court orders, tell the child that the other parent is not the biological parent, fabricate false allegations of abuse, force the parent to be supervised when there is no need to be, not allow communication on Father's Day, Mother's Day, birthdays, allege that non-custodial parents are responsible for the child's behavior, instruct schools to not provide information to keep the other parent uninvolved, provide schools with information to keep the other parent and family uninvolved, have fits of intense anger, verbal abuse against the parent in front of the child, refuse to speak to children who has sided with the other parent, interrogate the child after a visit, and in critical conditions, which this happened in my case, parents plan to abduct the children and go into hiding.
Okay. And I just wanted to touch on, real quick, on the statement you made that there's many parents who really discourage a healthy relationship with a good parent, and that's often the one that gets, in my experience in working in this for so long, that's often the one that actually does get custody for the simple fact that that's the parent that's willing to throw the children under the bus. And, while the other parent is trying desperately not to harm the child. So you've got one parent who's trying to protect them and another parent who doesn't care. It's all about abuse, which we know through our experience is all about power and control.
And authoritarian parenting style connected to narcissism. Authoritarian parents do not focus on meeting the child's essential or emotional needs. No, they are more concerned with the child living up to adult standards, norms, abiding, consensus values and expectations. The behavioral demands on the child is high. The child is expected to behave in a mature way, more or less like a civilized adult. However, despite the child's expectations, the kid is treated like an inferior. An interesting paradox, isn't it? Within the conservative, rule-oriented parenting style, there is little freedom of thought, creative experimentation, and independent choice-making. The means of controlling the child is by force and withdrawal of affection in terms of various forms of punishment. A child will be punished for disobedient, throwing tantrums and breaking rules. The effects of punishment on the child will be well behaved out of fear, not because of he or she like it is or is understood the meaning of a true positive caring attitude. In this way, a child learns to love and accept an acceptance independent on good behavior in the way an authoritarian parent is conditional parenting. If I behave, I will not be punished. The effects on kids are low self-esteem and inferior complexes, low self-worth, a lack of basic trust in people, no skills in listening to your intuition, passive attitude to their role in life, adherence to rigid tradition and fear of new experimentation. Learn to adopt a dualistic thought pattern. Don't know what actually like or what they don't like other than what they are being told is good and bad. Learning that showing emotions is dangerous and gets you into trouble. Learning no skills in dealing with difficult emotions and frustration. Learning that brute force, verbal and physical power is the type of power that is attractive. Incorporate a fixed historical behavioral pattern, which also leads to poor socialization skills.
And I just wanted to add in there, based on my experience, I've worked with children, that a recent incident that I heard an abused child say, which they're also extremely, as you said, well behaved, but I recently heard a child who has lived in abuse say, I'm not a people person, and this was something that's been fed into his personality so much that he believed it. I've also had incidences where these children are living with a parent that's not good for them, and they spend all time outside of school in their bedrooms. Mm-hmm. They're not able to socially grow. The parent who's targeting does not want them to become close to people, so that they open up and tell people what is going on at home. And this is a really big problem. If you're out there and you have your children locked up into their room, I would like you to think about that for a few minutes and try to take steps towards gaining a healthy relationship with your children and what's best for them socially. These children need to grow spiritually, socially, and in order to do that, they have got to have the love and affection of both parents if they are healthy. Now, that being said, I wanted to thank you for coming on and, helping us all understand that exactly what is taking place in some of the court systems. And we really appreciate all the research that you've done, because there's so many people who know that because they've been through it, but it's, what's really important is getting it out to the public so they are aware as well.
Right. And before you stigmatize someone, look at the reality. If you go sit in a psychiatrist's chair, they have to label you to bill your insurance.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. We appreciate you being on Silent Voices.
Thank you.